First of all, I want to share the agenda. We are going to start with an introduction to Hami Students and Alumni Association by Ahmed Shakir and Safi. And then we have the privilege of hearing from Professor Chuck Garcia, who is lecturing us about communication skill development. And at the end, we will have 15 minutes of your answer and question. So anyone, if you have any question, please leave it in the chat or just raise your hand at the end of the meeting. So before to proceed further, let's just kick off with Ahmed Shakir and Safi, the founder of Hami Student and Alumni Association.
Thank you so much, Shukriya, for starting the meeting. My name is Ahmed Shakir and Safi. I have a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from China, a master's degree in transportation engineering also from China, and a master's degree in civil engineering from Columbia University. Welcome, Chuck, and all our guests. Hope you have a good session today. Hami Student and Alumni Association is a volunteer student group. Our mission statement is to increase the number of academia from Afghanistan in the West, in Western universities, in Europe, in Africa, all over the world. So we basically help students from Afghanistan with their applications to universities. Volunteers help them through their applications and scholarship applications, university applications, help them prepare their application package. And the other thing that we help with is the standardized English test. That's the first requirement to attend, to be eligible to apply and attend college or university in North America. So we help with that as well. It includes IELTS, TOEFL, and Duolingo.
Thank you, Ahmed, for this detailed introduction. And so now we will listen to Professor Chuck Garcia. Chuck Garcia is the founder of Climb Leadership International, where he coached executives from all over the world on the art of public speaking, emotional intelligence, and becoming exceptional leaders. A true master of the spoken word. Chuck is not just a speaker, he is a professional speaker, an accomplished author. His book, I Climb to the Top, has earned Amazon bestseller status. Also, Professor Chuck is a faculty member at Columbia University's Graduate School of Engineering Professional Development and Leadership Program. Professor Chuck spent 25 years working at Wall Street. He was in charge of different leadership positions at Bloomberg, director at the BlackRock Solutions, and also managing director at Citadel. And you know what's really cool about him? He is also a mountain climber. He climbed huge mountains like Kilimanjaro, Elbrus, and the Matterhorn. I invite you all to give your full attention to Professor Chuck Garcia as he shares his valuable insight with us. Once again, thank you for being here, and let's make the most of this enriching experience. Professor Chuck.
Well, thank you, Shukriya and Ahmad. I am grateful for the opportunity to be here, but I do want to make an introduction because this is not just me. This is all of us as we build our communities. The one thing I learned about how to define success that I learned through the years, success is based on the lives we touch and the communities we build, and have the opportunity here to be a part of your community to the extent that we can help. That's why we're here. So I want to introduce my friend, former student, and I hope student again. And Isha, could you please introduce yourself? Because I think that there is a lot of value you can play in this association. Take it away.
Well, thank you, Chuck. Hi, everyone. My name is Isha Bhatia. I'm 17 years old from New Jersey in the U.S. I'm going to be a senior in school. And as Chuck mentioned, I'd like to go to, a school like Columbia where Chuck can be my professor again. I've been able to learn a lot under Chuck's tutelage, as was echoed previously. He truly is such a huge mentor and has taught me the value of communicating with others and being able to voice my ideas and my opinion. I'm super excited to be here with you guys today. I think this is an amazing cause, and I'll be more than happy to help out in any way possible, as I spent the last 17 years in this country. So I have a pretty good understanding of, how they may have some wisdom and advice to offer. So yeah, without further ado, I pass it back to you, Chuck.
Thank you very much. Okay, everyone, to the extent I know there is a lot of ambient noise, and if that is you, go ahead and mute until I call on you. But my classes are not lectures. I don't want to hear myself talk. I want this to feel like this is a meeting that we're all in this together. There are a couple different parts of this class because I recognize both what is on your mind, but also the skill set that we can help you with as you think about what it is we're actually trying to do here. What I'm trying to do is to provoke a change in the way you think about this thing we call communication. And I'll explain as I go on what I believe in my many years of doing this, where I think there's certain overemphasis that isn't always necessary and certain things that are not emphasized enough. So without further ado, I'm going to guide you through this journey, but I'm going to ask you to be mindful of participation in the chat function, and occasionally I will call on you. And if I call on you, I'm not asking you to do anything other than to read the screen that's right in front of you. So to do that, Isha, I'll let you and I kick it off as we guide you. As I call on you, you will set the tone and they will follow your lead of how this is going to work. Okay, so give me just a second to get set up here. Take a look at this. What I'd like you all to look at, I want you to all imagine that this is you. Now, if you're coming from Afghanistan, I am grateful for you doing this, but I also recognize people are in Pakistan, the United States, Canada, but wherever you are, think about you and your life journey. This is you. You are at the bottom of this mountain. But the interesting part, what happens is a door appears. And all of a sudden, you get to open up that door. The interesting part is what's on the other side of this door. And it looks very confounding and confusing, but is called the admission office. And it is for some U.S. university. Now, to Isha, maybe it's Columbia University, maybe it's Harvard or Yale, who knows? But I want you to put your mind in this place. But the interesting part about the door that just opens, Isha, the first thing that hits you when you open up that door, what is this?
Unpredictable.
Indeed. You don't know what's on the other side of this door. The second thing, just tell me how you feel when you look at that picture. In addition to being unpredictable, this door is?
Oh, it's like stress.
Yeah, it's just nerve-wracking. It's like, oh my God. And then lastly, what's at stake here?
It's expensive.
A lot of money.
Indeed, it is expensive. Very good. Thank you, whoever chimed in. This door you open is unpredictable. It is nerve-wracking, and it costs a lot of money. But the question is what it is you're about to do, is it worth it? So here today, and Ahmad, if I can ask you to chime in. There are 3 lessons that I hope we can lay down. Number 1.
College admission guidance.
Okay, so that's the first. Number 2, what I hope we can continue to extract.
Career advancement advice.
Very good, Fatima. Thank you for chiming in. And number 3, somebody jump in there.
Happy and prosperous.
Very good. So I realize... all good. I realize if you look at the 3 of them, what I hope I can help you with is definitely career advancement advice, although you may not be there yet. My wish for all of you is you lead a happy and prosperous life. I'm not saying I'm an expert on that, but I can help in a little bit. But I also recognize that what is on your mind to many of you who have ambitions to study in a Western university, and it doesn't have to be an American one, there's plenty of choices, but this is college admission guidance. Now, we're going to do this in 2 different forms. One of them is my own observation, because I know for many of you who are preparing to apply to a Western institution, I am giving you my opinion. Now, I am not a placement or admissions counselor. I am a professor, but I have worked with admissions counselors for the last 9 years, and I know what they want. That does not guarantee anybody admission to the choice institution, but I recognize there are certain advice I can give you that I hope will help you. So as I recognize that, Isha, there's 3 things we're going to talk about in the context of this meeting. Number 1,
college application and scholarship success.
Number 2,
spotlighting what makes you unique.
and then the most important part.
How to communication with
How
power.
to communicate with precision.
Power.
All right, so we've got everybody else jumping in here, which is a good thing. So let's get to it. First, what I'd like everyone to do, I want everyone to breathe, and I want you to look at me. Just take a deep breath. What I'd like you to do is to raise your hands. Just put your hands right here. Okay, so if your cameras are on, thank you. Thank you, Ali Ahmad. I see your beautiful smile. Thank you very much. This is my point. So what I'd like you to do is to recognize the importance of what I'm going to do, and I'll make this clear in just a second. But what I'd like you to do is to move your hands and just follow me. We are doing a nonverbal communication practice here. So follow me and put your hands right here. In fact, let me dip the camera a bit. This is what we know universally as the prayer position. This is a very peaceful place to put our hands. When we communicate nonverbally, there are 19 body parts that actually communicate. There are 3 body parts that communicate all the time. The first one is your hands. Your hands have an immense power to communicate, and there are 68 different ways that we can communicate with our hands. The second are our eyes. We communicate by what we see. And the third is we communicate by our smile or our frown. So what I'd like to do in the act of nonverbal communication, just by way of greeting, what we typically do that's universal is we put our hands together. And I notice where my hand is. It's next to my heart. The hands have the capacity to fight. They also have the capacity to be warm and welcoming. So what we know universally, if we put our hands in the prayer position and we just take a little bit of bow, I am bowing to the divine in you. And Isha, that's what I learned from my travels in India when it comes to yoga. Namaste is bowing to the divine in each other. So we recognize the importance of building this community, that success, as I mentioned before, is based on the lives we touch and the communities we build. So this is the first act non-verbally. Let me just bow to you, and I ask you all bow to each other, that we are now in the service of each other's success. We are here as a community to climb this mountain. So first, welcome. Notice what I've done just here. Stay with this because this is going to be important in just a second. So in addition to breathing and using our body language that's on display, my goal here today is not to fill your mind. That's what you're accustomed to doing in many of the classes that you take. I have a different approach. My goal is not to fill your mind, but to do 3 things: to clear your mind, to relax your mind, and to recognize that we are here to support your educational efforts. So I do have a question, and I'm going to ask you to go into the chat function. My question is, based upon my goal today, do we have a deal? Are you okay for me to clear your mind, not to fill it? Please put it into the chat function. Give me a yes or a no. Are you good with this objective? Thank you, Ahmad. Anybody else? Thank you. Shukriya, thank you very much. I am not here to fill your mind. That's what other classes do. I have a different idea of what's going to happen today. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I see. Yes, a very big yes. That's very good. I love the enthusiasm. Thank you. So stay with me. Let's kick this off to another place. Let me introduce, even as Shakira, I appreciate this, just by way of recognizing where I come from. I represent a couple different institutions. One of them is my own, and I work for a lot of Wall Street companies, and I'm very proud to serve Columbia. I am heading into my 7th year. People recognize me and associate me in two domains. One of them is public speaking, which I do professionally, and I have the privilege of teaching it, both at the executive level and at the college level. But also, we couldn't do it today, but if you are interested in a class in emotional intelligence, perhaps we can make that our second meeting. Because if you take a look at public speaking, your external layer, and then you look at emotional intelligence, the internal side of you, the side that faces your fears, that overcomes adversity, the things we don't see, that is your emotional intelligence. And if we put them all together, what I'm really discussing are leadership competencies. We look to and we admire the people that communicate well and the people that are empathetic and emotionally intelligent. You can find me on my website. Even though I have given you the opportunity for my book, many of you took the assessment and I sent you a climb to the top. I'm going to give another opportunity at the end if you haven't had the chance to do that, because I am the author of 2 books. What we're going to work on today is From a Climb to the Top. It uses mountaineering as a metaphor for how to climb careers using communication skills. My second book is called The Moment That Defines Your Life. It is a book on emotional intelligence. It is written, it has been edited, and it will be released on February 6th by Simon & Schuster. It is available now on Amazon for pre-order, but it's the second part of my domain. And I state that because if you take a look at the mountains that I have climbed, I have learned more from the mountains that I have climbed than in any classroom I ever sat in. And what I hope that I can bring you is my love and joy of mountaineering and the lessons that I learned about the importance of communication. So let everybody take a look at this picture. And I'd like you to put into the chat, tell me how you feel when you look at this picture. Give me, to the extent in the chat function, what you're looking at. How does this make you feel? Just give me a one-word description. Anxiety. Thank you. Anxiety, scared. Yeah, you're looking over that thing like, what? Hopeless. What is going on here? There is a very big mountain gap here, and let me explain. Power. Yeah, there is a lot of power in this mountains. Afraid, Fatima. Thank you. Strong as the same. Oh, cool. All right. What I'd like you to consider, take a look at the left-hand side of this mountain. And the left-hand side is your formal education. If you take a look at the right-hand side, that is career expectation. And what I'm pointing out is I'm heightening the contrast and the gap that occurs between what you will learn formally in college and when you cross that gap into your career, what the expectations are that may not align with what it is you learned when you sat in a classroom. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do, go into the chat function, and we're going to use a Greek rhetorical technique that I will emphasize throughout this talk called the rule of 3. I'd like everybody into the chat function, just type in the number 3. Everybody in, type in the number 3, please. Very good. Thank you. Everybody in. As you are typing the number 3, I'm going to ask you to type in 3 letters, and those 3 letters are G, P, and A. And that may be familiar to you, but everybody into the chat function, type in GPA. Thank you very much. Very good. We are now going to replace GPA with 3 other letters. And they are other letters that may be familiar to you, and it is the letters SAT. I am going to assume that you know the meaning of each of these. But on a scale of 1 to 10, what I'm going to ask you into the chat function, please put in your number of the importance of the SAT and GPAs on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 SAT and GPA is not important and 10 is they are very important. Give me your number. What do you assess the importance of that? Okay, Girls College says a number 5. We've got a 5. We've got a 7. Couple 7s, 8s, 10s. This is actually quite refreshing to see. 92,050. That's probably your GPA. Thank you, Fatima, for sharing your GPA. What I'm seeing is a whole lot of numbers. Okay, cool. What I'm going to ask you to do in recognition of the gap that you're looking at, I'd like you to just wipe away SAT, and GPA for just a second. And what I'm asking you to do is to replace it with the following letters. Everybody, please type in the letter C. Type in the letter C into the chat. Thank you very much. After you have typed in the letter C, I'm asking you to please type in the letter T. And then lastly, I'd like you to type in the letter R. So right now you are looking at 3 letters. Now everybody into the chat, in the same chat function, type in 3 letters. Type in CTR all together. Everybody into CTR. I'm going to hammer home what this is. CTR. Okay, very good. Thank you. And Ahmad, I'm going to need you for this one. So could you please unmute as we continue to guide this discussion? I want to continue. And you may be asking, what the heck am I talking about? If you please put into the chat, yes, I know what Chuck is talking about, or no, I have no idea what he's talking about. Put it into the chat, a yes or a no. Yes, I know CTR, or no. Okay, Sap looks like he knows. No idea. Okay, that's good. I'm purposely trying to get no idea, but there is an importance and there is a method to my madness. So stay with me. What the heck am I talking about? What I'm talking about, Ahmad, what is it? C, T, and R. What is this?
Success mindset.
It is a mindset of success. So right now, what I'd ask you to do, as important as GPA and SAT may be to you, I am asking you to wipe them away for the moment and to recognize. And CTR, Ahmad, what is CTR?
The CTR factor.
Right. So let's examine what this factor is and why it is you should notice and you should care. The CTR factor is the name of a book of a friend of mine who grew up in Delhi, India, called the CTR factor. His name is Suri Surinder. And he wrote a book when he came to America. He recognized that the values and the things that in India that people considered were success, he came to Texas in the United States and he recognized that there's something else going on. And when he joined the companies that he worked through the years, he figured out that there's something else that is much more valuable to him than just the score on his exam. And he wrote this book called The CTR Factor, and it represents 3 things that are a cautionary guide for all of you as to what you're actually trying to accomplish every time you work with somebody. So Ahmad, let's please explain. What does the C stand for?
Credibility.
What is the T?
Trust.
And what is the R?
Respect.
All right. Everybody into the chat function on a scale of 1 to 10. How important is it when you are working in an organization to establish credibility, trust, and respect? Indeed, it should be a 10. It should be an 11. It should be a 20. It should be a 2,000. There are many ways thank you. That's 100,000. That's very good. We're going to bust the scale. Amina, 10 isn't good enough. We want 500. I'm with you. There are many ways to achieve the CTR factor. What I'm going to ask you to do is to take out your phone, or you can screenshot this. I'd like you to take a picture of this. So let me give you a second. Take out your phone. Thank you, Isha. I see that. Just snap it. Okay, keep your phone handy. How do you achieve CTR, and what does this have to do with college admissions? Stay with me. In order to achieve CTR, Shukriya, I'm going to ask you on this one to unmute. There are many paths up the CTR mountain. What we're going to focus on are 3 of them. Number 1,
communicate clearly.
That's what we're focusing on. Number 2,
Develop emotional intelligence.
very good. And number 3,
deliver on your promises.
there are 3 different ways that I'm recommending you develop credibility, trust, and respect. With the most important one is the delivery on your promises. You make a commitment and you live up to it. The commitments do not know your GPA, your SAT, or your intelligence, but people recognize that your reputation is built on the ability to align your actions and your words, not your brilliance, not whether you went to Columbia or Harvard. Did you do what you said you were going to do? But in order to do that, we're going to pick an origin, and that's to communicate clearly. So what I'm going to ask you to do is keep your phone handy, and I'd like you to take a picture of this, because this is foundational, and it may be what you're going to write your college personal statement about the achievement of these things. Unfortunately, school doesn't teach you this. I had to figure this out throughout the course of my Wall Street life. How do I succeed? It came down to these three things. So what I'm really talking about here, and then we're going to jump into all the stuff that actually matters, is many of you, if you are on LinkedIn, please put a yes. If you have a LinkedIn page, I want to see if everyone is on LinkedIn. Put yes if you are on LinkedIn, or no if you do not have a LinkedIn page. Okay, so far I'm seeing some yeses. Here's why it's important. To my Columbia students, there are two lists that are very important that come out of LinkedIn. One of them is what are the top technology, engineering, and math skills that the world requires of you. And number one is blockchain technology. If you are an engineer, they are looking for people first with blockchain technology experience. Second is artificial intelligence. And third is cloud computing. But the list that I care most about, which is important to you, is what's called the LinkedIn Top 5 Soft Skills. And Ahmad, could you please read? And this is something for all of you to take action on. If you had to think about where are you going to develop professionally, I encourage you to give this list some important weight. Number one, Ahmad, the skill that is requested by employers that appears more than any other is?
Creativity.
Believe it or not, it's not just for the artists and the musicians. They are asking you, particularly as an engineer, that you bring creative solutions to conventional problems. Number two.
Persuasion.
Number three.
Collaboration, teamwork.
They're actually telling you in their job ads, we expect you to be a good team player. Number four.
Adaptability.
And number five.
Yes, emotional intelligence.
It was a thrill for me since I teach that, and it's become a critical leadership competency to take a look at this list. And I want you to regard this list and think about how you choose to develop yourself throughout the course of your career. My advice, you dial into this list. No matter what formal education teaches you, I don't diminish the importance of the formal education, but what I'm suggesting to get to full, and I'll explain girls' college, no worries, I will tell you what emotional intelligence is. It addresses the social, the survival, the instincts of being self-aware and socially aware. Emotional intelligence helps you to understand when you are engaged in a dialogue. Are you aware of the impact that you have on others? Are you aware when you walk into a room of what the mood is of the room that may cause you to change the discussion? Emotional intelligence has become a critical leadership competency to develop the empathy that people expect out of their leaders in this day and age. And Ahmad, what I'm going to recommend for our next class, if everybody wants to, we do an entire class on emotional intelligence. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely. I was going to ask you that, Chuck. But
yeah, and I remember when you were in my class, I remember how important the lasting staying power this had. But here's the important part. This is what employers want from you. And everything that I'm suggesting in this list is how you communicate. But there's something more pertinent to what we're going to do today. The bigger question is, Isha, what's the bigger question here?
How you communicate.
And take a look at the screen, and what did I just circle?
Colleges.
What colleges want from you. So what the LinkedIn soft skills tells you is what the employers demand from you. That is something for you to set your sights on the future. But now let me get into all of you who are interested in applying to Western colleges. And I'm speaking from a US-centric point of view. I cannot speak from the UK, Australia, Germany, because I don't live in those worlds, but I can speak from the perspective of the American colleges because I've worked with them for many years. Colleges want three things from you. Shukriya, what do they want to learn about you? Number one?
Past.
Number two?
And
number three? Your future. So think about this, what they're looking for. and this is where where it matters about how it is you choose to apply to college, your GPA and your SAT score, there's nothing you can do about it. It is important, and it is an important indicator. However, it will be your past. You will never talk about it again. No matter what your score is, you can't change it. So there's nothing you can do that's going to add any value to that. However, what they want to hear is your present, that you are interested in applying to college, whether undergraduate or graduate school, and they want to know what your circumstances are. And then number 3, they want to know your future. And your future is very much rooted in your dreams, your hopes, and your aspirations. But what I hope for your future is the development of your CTR factor. No matter what you decide to do in college, post-college, whatever it is, in the absence of credibility, trust, and respect, it is very difficult. And I can speak from the Western world, although I do a lot of business in China because my book was translated into Chinese and I work for the Bank of China. It's not that different. The capacity to build your credibility, trust, and respect. So again, CTR, Fatima, is the ability to develop your credibility, your trust, and your respect. So Fatima, please type into the chat function the word credibility, trust, and respect. That's what you look to develop. If you think about what you're going to do on any given day when you're working with people, give thought to every decision you make. Every interaction you have is the attempt to build credibility, trust, and respect. But let me get to what the colleges want from you. Thank you, Ahmad. There are 2 very big questions, and I'd like everybody into the chat function that the colleges want to know from you. And the first question is, who are you? This is a very big question that many people cannot answer. I'm going to ask you to consider you answer this question. Not now. Please put into the chat function, who are you? Put that in. Who are you? Because we're going to answer this. This is what the college want to know. Thank you, Isha. Who are you? There's a second question here. Now, who you are is both part of your past and part of your present. But there's a very big other consideration. What do you want? And that is your future. So please put into the chat, what do you want? 2 questions. Your past and your present, who are you? The future, what do you want? What the colleges want to know from you is the interesting combination of all 3. And you have a very challenging way in how you're going to communicate to the college each of these. And I'm going to explain what this means. And I'm going to lay it out right here, right now, what it is I'm talking about. If you take a look at this picture, this is the campus of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I could have shown Columbia here, but I don't want to show my bias. As much as I love Columbia University and proud to represent it, many of you will apply to other colleges. Thank you, Ahmad. This is MIT and Cambridge University. But I'm just showing this background. What I'm speaking about, what do you want? What I'm speaking about is what the colleges want from you. And Shukriya, let's go through this. When you are applying to college, the person that is reading about you is trying to determine, can you succeed in our environment? And they're going to give you a yes, we believe you can and you're accepted. A no, we believe you will not succeed relative to the other applicants, or perhaps you'll get waitlisted and they haven't made up their mind. So the question is, what are the college success predictors? Number 1, Shukriya?
Scores, standardized and grades in challenging classes.
Right. So for your SAT or your ACT, you're going to submit them if they require that, or you may not if it's optional. But either way, what they're looking for is your high school transcript. Did you take difficult classes and did you perform well? There's nothing you can add to that. That's just a transcript. That's not who you are. It's how you're performed. There's something more important than what they're looking for. Number 2, Shukriya?
It's extracurricular.
What do you do when you're not in class? But here's where it gets much more interesting. And this is for all of you who are applying to college. This could be the most important part. What's number 3, Shukriya?
Positive contribution to the community.
And I'll explain why this is incredibly important. In here, this is what they're going to ask you when you write about yourself. They are looking for 3 things. I'm going to narrow this focus, and this is the most important part to communicate whether or not you believe you are a good candidate for that university. It comes down to three things. Shukriya, what are they?
Is curiosity, empathy, overcome adversity.
Right. So right now, right here, this is you. This is not an SAT score. This is not a GPA. This is an expression of you that the college counselor wants to hear. So there's three things, and I'm keeping it in the rule of three. The reason I say that, and I want you to take a picture of this as well, this is where you differentiate yourself from everyone else. You can assume that everyone applying to Columbia has at least a 1,500 on their SAT and probably 100 GPA. So what makes you different? Nothing. They don't know your distinction. But what they're looking for is your curiosity, empathy, and have you overcome your adversity. Thank you. I appreciate that, Girls College. I don't remember your name, but thank you. The most important part, everybody into the chat, type in three words: curiosity, empathy, and adversity. Think about the enormity of this. These things do not appear on your transcript. They are not listed on LinkedIn. The only way anyone's going to know about this is if you choose to tell them. Are you curious? Are you empathetic? Do you feel what other people feel? And how have you overcome adversity? Now, for those of you in Afghanistan, you are writing your chapter constantly, and I am so appreciative that you're here, and I admire your courage. But for all of us, we all have a story to tell. And unfortunately, many of my students think that their intellect is good enough. It is not. There is no shortage or monopoly on intellect. There are plenty of intelligent people, but there are not people who can write a good story. Are you curious, empathetic, and how do you overcome adversity? This is the most important takeaway from this class. I'm going to teach you communication skills from my book, but nothing is more important for admission to college than right here, because this is what makes you unique. Everyone who writes a personal statement is going to write something different. When they look at the SAT and the GPA scores and they're exactly the same, that doesn't tell the college counselor much. So this is your opportunity to do so. But I want to point out a very interesting part of the application process. On the one hand, you're going to be talking about, on the other hand, you're going to be talking about, I hope, is your contribution. And whoever, can you please unmute? Let's get everybody to unmute for now. Everybody unmute. Okay, everybody mute. Let's get that sound off. Somebody is speaking where they are off mute, and it's very distracting. Thank you. Okay, good. Now, everybody, go ahead, mute, and then unmute. Let's just get mute, please. Thank you. Good. Let's get it quiet. Let me just make this point, and then I'm going to ask you to unmute. There is a very interesting, and I don't say it's a conflict, but it is heightening the contrast between two opposing forces. On the one hand, the college expects you to talk about yourself. That's okay. That's good. On the other hand, the college is going to ask you, what is your contribution to the community? And here's why it's important. I have written many letters of recommendation to colleges, all kinds of colleges, not just to Columbia, but Harvard, MIT, you name it. I have written it for many of my students. What they ask for always in the recommendation letter, what is my assessment of you, the individual? But what they always ask constantly, do I believe that individual, and how will they contribute to that community? This is a very important part for you to understand when you write your mission statement. It's not enough just to be writing about you, your curiosity, your empathy, and your adversity. The most important part to the colleges is the capacity to juxtapose what you learn about yourself to your contribution to the community. So you're really taking two different paths here. One of them is the self, and one of them is the contribution to community. They are equally important, which means, here's what I'm saying. And Isha, if I could take you on this one. My opinion of most of my high school students is the following. Take it away. We overestimate something, Isha. What do we overestimate?
We overestimate the value of intellect.
Okay, I'm not diminishing the importance of your intelligence. What I'm saying is you are on equal footing with other people who are equally as intelligent. That's not your story. Your 100 GPA and your perfect SAT is only one part of it. However, Isha, let's heighten the contrast. What's the next statement here?
Underestimate the importance of
two things. Number one, the importance of can you see temperament? So everybody into the chat, type in the word temperament. We underestimate the importance of staying calm under the weight of pressure and great expectations. It changes our behaviors, and it doesn't necessarily tie to intellect. This is where emotional intelligence comes in, the ability to stay calm under the weight of pressure and expectations. I don't have to tell you about that in Afghanistan. You know how that feels. But from the perspective of the West, our ability to stay calm under the weight of expectations is a major leadership competency. And Shukriya, we underestimate the importance of temperament, and we underestimate the importance of one other thing. Go ahead and unmute. We underestimate the importance of
self-correction.
Right. So this is adaptability. Everybody into the chat. How do you adapt to the changing circumstances? I recognize in Afghanistan, Pakistan, these are countries that are constantly undergoing this kind of change. The United States, Germany, UK, no different. We are constantly changing. And your temperament and your ability to adapt are your most important assets. And this is what the colleges want to hear about. How did you change? Because here is, I want everyone to take a look at this picture. When I came out of college, take a look at that picture. I thought that success was going to be a straight line right to the top of my career mountain. What I came to learn instead, that the shape of your careers are very different, and they look more like this. So for those of you who have entered a career, please put into the chat, you either agree with me or you're going to challenge me. I'm asking you, is that what success really looks like? Give me a yes or give me a no. Amina, thank you very much. Yes, indeed. And here's why. Your intellect may not appear in that crooked line, but your ability to adapt to changing circumstances does. What makes it important is it changes our behavior often. And even though you have to face the adversity, some people are more effective at facing it than others, which is why this is important, because success and happiness is rarely a straight line. What colleges want to know, how effectively and what did you learn as you navigated life's uncertainties? This is an important part of your story, and it's a much more interesting story for the college counselors to read. So you have an opportunity here, and your most important part that makes you you is your personal statement. My recommendation is you talk about three things. Shukriya, what are you going to talk about in your personal statement?
My values.
Good morning.
Yeah, distinctions and how you will contribute to the community.
Right. So think about this in the rule of three. What do you value? What makes you unique? Those are important, but that's only 2/3 of the frame. Most importantly, what has this done? What does this imply with what it is the contribution you've made to your community? Now, your community may be a high school class. It may be girls in Afghanistan. It could be men in Germany. I don't know what it is. Each of you get to define your community. Colleges want to know your impact. So it's an interesting dichotomy here. You're both talking about you and you're talking about your community. And there are certain lessons learned. So Ahmad, what do they want you to include in your personal statement about the lessons you've learned?
If you were vulnerable.
Vulnerable. Talk about the lessons that you learned. I've seen many high school students talk to me about all the great things they're doing. And when I ask them, tell me about the times you failed or the lessons you learned, they're afraid to talk about it. That's what I want to hear. It's a much more interesting story if we just admit that we don't do things perfectly and what we learn about ourselves in the journey. Second, what's got to be included in that statement, Ahmad?
How you dealt with adversity.
Right. What happened? How did you deal with this? And third,
What was memorable?
indeed, what the college counselors are frustrated with is many of the essays that they read look like everyone else's, and it's very difficult for them to remember. So my recommendation is pick something very specific. In fact, Ahmad, here's how I'm going to structure it. Many of you, when you write your personal statement, I have seen some that look like this. They have a beginning, they have a middle, and an end. I'm not saying that's a bad way to tell the story. Many stories are told that way. I don't find that approach particularly memorable. What I recommend instead, and this is my own personal opinion, having written 2 books and having read countless papers and essays and thousands of books, I'm going to recommend, Ahmad, that you structure your story slightly differently. So when you're ready to write your personal statement, using the rule of 3, I'm going to ask you to follow this structure. Number 1,
Awareness.
right. So what you're doing first in your essay and personal statement is making them aware that something exists in the world, whether it is war, peace, happiness, sadness, whatever you decide to write about. Make the person who is reading this aware that something is important. Next, what do we talk about after the awareness?
Conflict.
Right. So talk to them and put into your essay, there is a conflict that I have found. It could be the conflict is people are nice, people are kind, people are mean, people are frustrated. Whatever that conflict is, choose the conflict. It is much more interesting to read about the conflict that you are working through. And then third,
Resolution.
how did you resolve your conflict and how did it impact the community? I know this sounds a bit abstract now. We're not here to solve the problem. I'm simply asking you to consider to think differently about how you approach your personal statement. I'm going to do the climb to the top techniques in just a minute, but I wanted this to be the setup because I know this is on your mind. My recommendation here is have the courage to be different, not to look like anyone, not to smell, taste anything. Your ability to distinguish yourself is what's going to get you into the right colleges or the colleges of your choice. It feels safe to tell the same story as everyone else. Thank you. Awareness, conflict, and resolution. That is a story form. Think about a different way to get their attention because your objective is to get them to notice and get them to care. So Ahmad, what is the stories that that we want to leave the college counselor with? Number 1,
Significant to your evolution.
right. So what you're going to talk about when you speak of the awareness, conflict, and resolution, we can follow this up in another class to get more specific. They want to know, how did you evolve as a result of the thing you're writing about? Number 2, what do we want this story to be?
Specific and compelling.
Right. So on the specificity, I have found some of the essays that I've read, they're all over the place. It's like you're trying to save the world and to boil the ocean. Don't do that. Be very narrow and specific about the conflict that you're describing, because that's what the college counselor will relate to. If you tell them, I want to save the world, I want to save the whales, save the children, that's wonderful and it's commendable, but it's not interesting. What's interesting is that is unique to you and you figured out a way to overcome that problem. And number 3,
Reveal what you learned about yourself and your community.
so the important part here is, what did you learn about yourself and what did you learn about others? This is what colleges care about. The opportunity to be able to communicate what you learned and what you learned about others. And this is where emotional intelligence training kicks in. Interesting dichotomy here. The self and the community. So everybody type in 2 words into the chat function. Type in self and type in community, because there's two missions you need to accomplish. One of them is the description of yourself and what you learned through the awareness in conflict and resolution. And the second, the impact on your community. Equally important. Let me pause here for just a second. Let's just let this set in before we jump in and kick into a completely different gear. Okay, let me stop right near and ask you, has this been helpful so far? Give me a yes if this has been helpful, and be honest with me. I tried to put this together for the sake of everyone, and I don't always know whether I'm hitting my target. So I'm asking just for some self-reflection. Is this helpful? I appreciate that. Are there any questions so far before we jump into communicate with power, precision, and impact? And you can certainly feel free to unmute and ask a question. Otherwise, we're going to jump right into the next part. Any questions? Okay.
If anybody has a question, if you would please raise your hand then so that we know who has a question first and who has a question next. Thank you.
Okay. While we're doing that, Ahmad, you have seen me, and Isha, you have seen me in the classroom. And if I were standing in this classroom, I would say to you right now to sum all of this up. Ahmad, I'm going to ask you to take it, and Aisha, I'm going to ask you to repeat it. If I were standing there and I had one thing that I would say to you, what would it be, Ahmad?
Be thoughtful about the experiences that shape who you have become.
Isha, repeat it.
Be thoughtful about the experiences that shaped who you have become.
This is the most important part of your personal statement, and the only thing that's going to give your college counselor a glimmer of who you are. Don't be shy. Tell them your dramatic story. The only way they're going to notice and to care is that you have written something that is different from the rest of the world. I state this advice because I see too many of the people that I mentor trying to play it safe. This is no time in the history of the world to play it safe. I appreciate the mind and the heart are always trying to survive. I understand that and I appreciate that. But when it comes to the college counselor and trying to distinguish yourself from everyone else, you will not distinguish yourself with SAT and GPA. Everyone that I see in my Columbia class is the top of their class, perfect GPA, perfect SAT score. That is to be commended, but it is not what makes you unique. So what I'm going to ask everyone to do is an exercise we're going to work on for the remainder of this class. I'd like you all to take out a piece of paper and a pen, or if you have a device that allows you to draw circles, that is okay. What we're going to do right now, and what I'm going to leave you with, is an exercise I learned in my many years of traveling through Japan, and it's something called Ikigai. It translates in English to reason for being. And this may be, at the completion of your Ikigai, what you might want to write about in your personal statement. And I will explain. So the first thing I'm going to ask everyone to do with your pen, paper, or your device, I'm going to ask you to draw 3 circles into a Venn diagram. The exercise we're about to do is the exercise of self. When you complete this exercise, you are going to get a glimmer into you. And you may want to use this when you express the sense of self in your college essay. On the left-hand side, outside the top left-hand circle, write 3 words, what I love. Don't do anything else. The only thing you should have on your page is the Venn diagram, which is empty. And on the top left-hand corner, write the words, what I love. Now, let's begin to complete this exercise. We're going to do it in 3 parts. Remember, everything is in the rule of 3. What I'm going to ask you to do right now is to write into the left circle 3 things that you love. Let me give you an example. Let's just say I love science, I love teaching, and I love my family. There's no limits here. I'm just asking you to consider, don't overthink this. Intuitively, if I asked you right now, tell me what you love, I want you to write that into your circle. Don't share it with me. This is right now just about you, but I want you to write this because at the end of this class, we're going to have a completion of 3 things that matter to make you who you are. So write 3 things that you love. Could be my mother, my father, Italian food, Afghani food, whatever. 3 things that you are passionate about that you love. Okay, let me give you a second. And you can work on this later, and you can do this. I do this all the time for myself and for my students because I am much more interested on what's inside of you than the grade. I don't care what you get in my class. I care how you develop and how you evolve. So what we're going to do right now, we are going to go on a mountain climb, and the mountain is called Communication Peak. You're all going to climb with me, and I'm going to guide you through. We're a little late here, but the most important part here is, where does your communication journey begin? So we're going to begin this journey, and the journey begins with 3 numbers, and I want everyone into the chat. We are now going to jump into the tactics of communication that I'm going to ask you to consider that you use every minute of every day. So I want everyone into the chat function to type in the letter 55, then type in the number 38, and then type in the number 7. This is the beginning of the communication tactics I'm about to teach you. First, I'm putting it into a numeric model. 55, 38, 7. What the heck does that mean? We've already covered CTR. Now let's cover 55, 38, 7 because your journey begins here. And you may be asking, what does this mean? I understand that. Let me ask you a question before I get into what that means. Take a look at this picture. Take a look at what everyone is doing. And what we can agree on, they are all entering a room. Think about how you enter a room. Try to visualize every time you walked into class, every time you walked into a meeting, every time you walked to the kitchen table with your family. Think about, as crazy as this sounds, and I actually teach people how to enter a stage and how to walk into a conference room. How do you enter a room? This may seem ridiculous to you. It's not, because it speaks to the power of communication and where it begins. How do you enter a room? When you walk into a room, just like we did on the Zoom meeting today, people see you. It's not that they're staring at you, but this is the first part of the senses, and it's biological. You are being noticed. You haven't spoken, but people see you. So immediately when you walk into the room, there's a visual effect. And Ahmad, what is it we're talking about before we even speak?
Body talk.
What is it? Body talk. What is the implication?
Communicates in ways more powerful than sound.
So think about the implication when you walk into a room. So let me ask you a question. Please put it into the chat. When you walk into a room, have you communicated? Give me a yes or a no. And Mustafa, thank you very much for your kind words. I appreciate that. When you walk into a room, I hope I'll see you on the next one. When you walk into a room, are you communicating? You have not even spoken. So Isha, what is the theme here? Hold on just a second. Take a look at this picture. The theme, Isha. Take it away.
Hold on, it's still loading.
Okay.
Your body speaks.
Okay, let's pause for dramatic effect. So take a look at everyone in there. Are they communicating? You bet they are. So the punchline here, your body speaks, Isha.
Before your mouth opens.
So consider the enormity of that. You are communicating before you've even spoken. Now I'll get into the 55, 38, 7. But before I do that, I want everyone to take a look at this picture. You walk into a restaurant. You see all these people, food's about to come, but take a look at this. Please put into the chat, does anything in this picture strike you as strange? Give me a yes or a no. I want your involvement here. Is there anything strange about this? Shukriya, what do you find that's strange about this picture?
No one is communicating. Everyone is
Correct. They're communicating to everyone else instead of communicating to each other. Does that strike you as odd? It does. And it's very disappointing to me when I walk into a restaurant and I see 2 people. They may be on a date. They may be in a family, whatever it is. They're not talking to each other. They're talking to everyone else. And somehow or another, that doesn't feel right. Shakira, have you ever seen that in a restaurant?
Unfortunately, I'm one of those.
Right. I'm asking all of you to not do this. And here's why. You are communicating in body language. What you're communicating, the perception that when you are communicating to someone else, that you are not present in the discussion with the people right in front of you. I am asking you to change your habits, to keep your phone in your pocketbook or your backpack when you are at the dinner table with anyone, including your family. To recognize that when you are on your phone, you are communicating another intention. You are communicating the fact that someone else has garnered your attention, and right now that is your preference to put it there. I'm asking you not to do that because your body language is speaking volumes about you, whether or not you are present. I recognize there are things you have to respond to. You are under a lot of pressure. You go to a restaurant and eat and talk with whom you are there, Ahmad. Very good. But here's the interesting part that I hear when people begin to speak. So the first part is the nonverbal, but here is the challenge when it comes to verbal communication. We miss a lot from nonverbal, but Ahmad, I'm going to work with you on this one. I had a student from Minnesota who was at Columbia, probably a classmate of yours, and I asked him a question. Ahmad, what was the question?
What do you think of New York City so far?
All right, that was the question, and I want everyone to recognize the answer. And here was his answer, Ahmad, and I'd like you to read it with all the enthusiasm you can muster. So when I asked him, and his name was Michael, I was like, Michael, what do you think of New York City so far? Ahmad, here was his answer. Ready? Take it away.
So, this city, New York, like, I kind of think that, we might sort of, experience like this new chapter in our education. It's literally,
And here is the punchline, Ahmad, and I couldn't believe he hit me with this wonderful punchline.
Like, yeah.
All right, everyone into the chat. Is there anything wrong with this statement? Yeah, it's funny. I found it funny, but it was also a learning opportunity. Yeah, there's something wrong here. And if you were to go to interview with Goldman Sachs or BlackRock or all the companies I work with, and you were to speak like that, there's something wrong here. And this is where the heart of communication comes in, because many of you will interview at your college or your graduate school. And when you do, I want you to prepare to clear your mind. You can walk in with perfect GPA and perfect SAT scores, and the impression that you're going to form to the person that is listening is this. This puts you at a significant disadvantage. So we're going to solve this problem. And as we head into the communication tactics, what's happening here is something called listening fatigue. As Ahmad was speaking, hitting the ums, the uhs, it is exhausting. And even my own occupational hazard, when I'm listening to the radio and someone is being interviewed and they're saying, it's hard to listen to it. So we're going to stop that behavior and we're going to solve this problem. The question is, how do you solve this problem? It's hard to do. But Ahmad, I know you love this one. So what is today's most significant learning outcome? It is a non-verbal tool. Here's how we solve it. Ahmad, I'll need you in just a minute. I want everyone to it feels very awkward.
Yes.
Not speak. But that's the point. So Ahmad, the 8th commandment in the climb to the top that I know you grasp onto exceedingly well. And I want everyone, when Ahmad narrates this commandment, I want everyone into the chat because this may be how you solve your problem. It is called, hold on. I have lost control. It's called, Ahmad, take it away.
The power of the pause.
The power of the pause. Everyone into the chat, type in power of the pause. Notice what I've just done. I've actually stopped talking. I'm resisting the impulse to blurt out the first thing that's in my mind, which is usually, we're not going to do that. We're looking for clear, concise communication, and often it means stopping a behavior. So your starting point for how you communicate is 55, 38, and 7. And let me explain what that means. When you walk into a room and you meet someone for that interview for the first time, 55% of the impression that you are forming is based on the visual. It's based on what they see. Think about the enormity of this statement. It's not what you said. It's not the shoes you wear necessarily, but it is a visual component that the impressions they form, they see you before they hear you. So everybody into the chat, 55 visual, put that in there. Be mindful of this. This is important. Do not dismiss the significance of the power of the first impression is visual. 55% of your impression is formed by what they see. Now, as you continue, you shake their hand and you begin to speak. It's not your voice that impresses them. It's the tone of your voice, and it's called tonality. So everybody into the chat, 38 tonality. The tone, are you enthusiastic? Are you miserable? Are you happy? Are you sad? This is what the biology of human beings picks up on. We pick up on the tone. And here's the interesting part. They only remember 7% of what the words you actually chose. Because in the United States, we speak at a rate of 125 words a minute. There's no way even a genius can remember all of those words. So be mindful. Thank you, Amina. Be mindful of the importance of the visual and the tonality, of how important it is at the first impression, because when somebody who is interviewing you thinks about you, they will usually confirm their first impression. It's called confirmation bias. No problem, Misha. I know you need to go and we're over time. So I'm going to need about another 20 minutes. If anyone can stay on, please do. If you need to jump off, it's okay. So Ahmad, as a time check, it's 10:22. We'll be finished at around 10:42. Is that okay?
Absolutely, Chuck.
Okay, good. No problem. So what I'm talking about here is your career foundation. And your career foundation as a simple model is based on an alphanumeric model. Your ability to establish credibility, trust, and respect, and the recognition that where your communication begins is visual, tonal, and then your words. So think about this. If you'd like, take a picture of this or take a screenshot and plaster it on a wall, put it in your phone, share it with your wife, your family, your friends, your brother, your sister. I'm trying to spread a message to the world that this is not known, nor is it emphasized, but it is critically important for your career growth that you think differently about how you walk into a room, how you communicate, how you listen. All of this matters. So if you want, take a picture of this. And if you don't remember anything else from this meeting, this will be planted in your head. And I hope you will begin to practice this, and I'll show you what those tactics are. So think about walking into the room. Not with husbands only, okay. Wherever you decide to practice it. Think about when you walk into a room. You walk into a room, how do you present yourself? Picture yourself in this scenario. You have walked into Columbia, Harvard, MIT, wherever it may be, and you are now about to form impressions. And here's my question to you. Ahmad, you may remember this from class, but the others who have not had may not know this. How quickly do you form a first impression? Give me a guess. Put it into the chat function for everyone that's still here. When you meet someone, how quickly? Give it to me in seconds, minutes, whatever you think it is. There's no wrong answer. I just want your opinion. How quickly do you form a first impression? Put it into the chat. Give me a number. Very good. 1 second. 5 minutes. First seconds. Very good. 5 seconds. Shukriya, what's the answer? How quickly you form an impression is?
It's the minutes that you just see it.
Exactly. How many seconds?
250 milliseconds.
It is 1/4 of a second. That's how quickly it happens. 250 milliseconds is faster than the blink of an eye. The blink of an eye is 400 milliseconds. The 5538, and it's part of the human condition. We are conditioned to immediately be able to respond because of our ability to sense danger. So over years of evolution, we've been very quick and intuitive about trying to assess what's right in front of us. And in a world of meetings and presentations and all of that, that 250 milliseconds, and I didn't make it up. This is the science from MIT and Harvard, where they did all kinds of studies and they came to that conclusion. So let's continue on, and then we're going to finish up with the 10 Commandments very briefly. I'm mindful of your time, but I do want to get this exercise in. The second part of this exercise, right in the top right-hand corner, write the words, what I am good at. And then, without thinking too much, write 3 things that you are good at. I'm giving you examples here. These aren't necessarily mine. Just want you to write in 3 things that you're just good at. Could be tennis, could be soccer, math, science. What are you good at? Put them all in there. And it may even be the same thing as what you love. What we're looking for when you finish this exercise is the intersection of the circles, because that isn't all you'd have to do without even knowing you. Show me the intersection of your circles and I'll tell you who you are. And this may be what you want to write about in your personal statement, but also when you describe yourself, you can describe yourself in the model of Ikigai. All right, let me get into the 10 Commandments then. This is where we're going to finish. For those of you who want to communicate, what I've done already, I've asked you to reconsider how you're going to write your personal statement. Awareness, conflict, and resolution is the form that I recommend you write your story, not a beginning, a middle, and an end. We really appreciate conflict and how to resolve a conflict, and that's what I recommend you write about. But now when you begin to speak out of a climb to the top, the reason I wrote the book through my own career and what I've learned is when I ask people, many CEOs that I interviewed for the book, tell me your success factors and give me the percentages. It was amazing how many people, in spite of their profession, through many years of their career, talked about the importance of their communication skills. Not their technical competence. They were good on that. And most people are promoted on the strength of their technical competence, their communication skills. That's what I'm going to leave you with here. And I'm going to leave you with the 10 Commandments of Great Communicators. This is the framework of the book. So if you take my assessment or you would like a copy of the book that I will send to you, this is the framework for thinking about how to communicate differently. And this is what I'm going to ask you to consider. This is no different than if you were an engineer or a mathematician, you are given a toolkit. This is the toolkit, and these are your 10 tools. This is what I hope you will learn to practice. And this is right out of A Climb to the Top, which is available in English and Chinese, and we're working on the Spanish language translation as well. That'll be out in the summertime. But look at this 10 Commandments. Think of this as your toolkit. Let me back up for just a second. There are 10 commandments here. We're going to go briefly through each of them, and I ask you to read the book. We have already taken care of a few commandments. One of them I've explained using the rule of 3. That's chapter 6. Pause power is chapter 8. Speak with conviction, the elimination of filler words is chapter 3. I'm jumping around here, and we've already covered a little bit of body language. But I'd like you to consider the first chapter is called the primacy recency effect. Recognizing, and I'd like you, everybody into the chat function to type in 2 words. Type in the word time and type in the word attention. 2 words, time and attention. Thank you. When you meet someone and you're presenting or you're in a class and you are teaching somebody something, you're competing for 2 things. You're competing for people's time and you're competing for their attention. So one of the things that many people don't realize is that the words that you communicate are not equally weighted. People tend to remember the first thing you say and the last thing you say. I've got it all explained on the video. There are 2 videos here. I'm going to show them, but I'm going to let the video explain. Ahmad, sometimes there's sound issues. Give me a thumbs up or a thumb down in about 3 seconds if you can do this.
Scenario. It's Friday night. You excitedly arrive at the theater to see that movie that you've been waiting to see. If the movie was any good, you gave the screen your undivided attention as the plot kicked into high gear and ascended towards the climax. What you walk away with and what you remember most vividly is where you started and where you ended. Primacy and recency. The primacy-recency effect is the observation that information presented at the beginning and the end of a learning episode tends to be remembered better. As a speaker, you have a grand total of 15 seconds to capture that audience's attention. The conclusion is equally as important as the introduction. This is your call to action, your opportunity to leave the audience with your final and longest lasting impression. Your goal is not only to compel the audience to listen, your goal is to answer the question, what do I want my audience to think, feel, and do when the speech is over?
So think about that. Everybody type in 3 things: think, feel, and do. Whenever you are communicating something, you want to speak to their mind, you want to speak to their heart, and you want to speak to their ability to act. 3 things: think, feel, and do. I have sat through so many presentations. I don't know what to think. I don't feel anything, and I don't know what to do. That's terrible. That's a waste of your time. Just conveying information for information's sake is only as valuable as the ability to provoke a change in what somebody thinks, what somebody feels, and what somebody does. So when you walk into that college interview, what do you want them to think of you? What do they want them to feel about you? That becomes more personal. And what do you want them to do? Admit me to Columbia University. That is the call to action. And too many people, when they communicate, have no consciousness of what they're trying to do. They're just talking. Don't want you to do that. I want you to give thought and to frame your discussion. What do you want the listener to think, feel, and do? The second commandment is called the power of emotional appeal. This is the only other video. I'll let the video do the talking, but unfortunately, too many people, especially in the business world, think they have to be robotic or emotionless. That's not the case at all. Let Chris explain, and then we'll finish up about 10 minutes for the rest of the commandments.
How many times have you heard someone say, "Oh, I'm just not feeling it"? Let's talk about feeling, about emotion. Emotion is the guiding force that affects all of the major decisions we make in our lives, both personally and professionally. Imagine you're giving a speech and it's your job to convince the audience to join your cause that you are so passionate about. How do you do this? According to Aristotle, you have 3 options: logos, ethos, and pathos. Logos is the logical appeal, using logic and reason to convince the audience. Ethos is the ethical appeal. This is using your credibility to convince the audience. Pathos is the emotional appeal. This is persuading the audience by appealing to their emotions. Aristotle knew that logos and ethos are important, but if you want to convince someone to join your cause, it is crucial to appeal to their emotions. Emotion trumps logic. In order to connect and appeal to your audience's emotions, speak with sincerity and conviction. Personalize a story. Talk about the times you have failed and the lessons you have learned. Humanize yourself to the audience. It was Maya Angelou that said, "People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel."
An important lesson here, and please put into the chat. People will forget what you said. People will also forget what you did. But there's one thing people will never forget when they meet you. What is it? Put it into the chat. What will they never forget about you? People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did. But there's one thing that Chris made the point here. He is my former student. What they will never forget. How you made them feel. Indeed, they never forget that. So be mindful when you walk into that meeting. You look them in the eye, treat them with respect. You bring enthusiasm. You have a tone that you are happy to be there, that this isn't some kind of drudgery. They're going to remember. In fact, yeah, what you did wrong, maybe, but they're never going to forget how you made them feel. Be mindful of that. Do not walk in robotically. Be thankful, express your appreciation. Remember how they made you feel. Okay, let's finish up with these commandments. Third commandment we already covered. And I also I know what it's like to speak a foreign language. I learned a foreign language along the way, and I don't have the command of Spanish quite like I do with English. So sometimes in trying to command the language, I hit a lot of filler words in Spanish. I appreciate you have picked up some of our bad habits for those of you where English is your second language. It's a difficult language, but I recognize what I hope I can help you to do in the power of the pause is to recognize the avoidance of these words that are right in front of you. They are called filler words and verbal crutches. What happens is when you don't know what it is you want to say, you hesitate. And that's okay. That's called hesitation phenomenon. You hesitate because you don't know what the next word is going to be, just as I've paused right now. What many people do when they're hesitating, instead of staying silent and thinking about what I'm going to say, they just blurt out. Like, so sort of, there are bigger problems in the world to solve than this. However, this becomes your problem if you are looking to be distinct and to communicate clearly and with impact. Choose your words carefully. If only 7% is what they remember, and most of your words are filler words and verbal crutches, that's what they're going to remember about you. So be mindful. Hopefully, in chapter 3 talks about the different techniques to eliminate them, but the best way is through the power of the pause. The next commandment is body language and recognize, and I'd like everybody into the chat function. Type in the number 19 and type in the number 407. 2 numbers. There are 19 body parts that communicate. The hands, the eyes, and the mouth are the most predominant. But if you add up all the ways that we communicate, no matter what language, there's 407 gestures. With our hands, with our eyes, there's lots of ways to do it. But let's put this to a test. Everybody take a look at this picture and give me your opinion in the chat function. What is President Obama communicating without even speaking? What do you interpret his body language to be saying if you were right in front of him? Give me your opinion in the chat. Yeah, what's going on here? Very good. Shakira, what is the body part that your eyes went to that led you to that conclusion?
His hands gesture and his eyes.
Very good. Exactly. And he's saying, what is going on? What is up? Look at the eyes. He's all over the place. Look at the hands. And it's a universal sign that if you put that up there, it's usually an exasperation. I don't know what's going on here. But it's universal, and we see that. So this great orator, a man who uses his words, he can communicate just as powerfully without saying a word. And that's my lesson to all of you. Let your body sometimes do the talking, or observe when someone is talking to you, mind their body language. Now take a look at this. How would you feel if you were on the other side of somebody looking at you like this? What would you feel? Put it into the chat. Tell me what you feel. This is body language. He is communicating. He's not speaking, but he is communicating. Yeah, right. It could be. Right. What would you think to this guy? I don't want to be around this guy. This is terrible. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, I got to look at this. All right, let's continue on. Take a look at all of these scenarios. Look at the hands. Now think about you in the meeting rooms and the language, the body language that you communicate. Look at the eyes. Look at the mouth. Look at the hands. This is you. We are always communicating in hands, eyes, and mouth. Recognize the importance of the discipline you bring to your body language, because your body language speaks volumes. And sometimes it's in conflict to your word. People usually remember your body language before they remember your words. So when you walk into a meeting, 3 things have to happen simultaneously. Look into their eyes. Let me back up and smile. The importance of a smile. The smile conveys a great deal about your mood and what the other people will conclude. And then you shake their hands. So I want you to take a notice here. Take a look at this interview. Look at the interview and the 3 person who are interviewing this individual. Would you say, based upon your ability to read this picture, would you say this interview is going well? This interview is going poorly? Give me your opinion. Just taking a look at what is happening here. Do you think this is going well, or do you think this is going poorly? Indeed, Shukriya, it's going great. Now take a look at what's happening here. Look at the hands of the people that are doing the interview, actively engaged. Take a look now at the hands of the person being interviewed. Her hands are in what's called the modified steeple position. That's a good place to be. Now, take a look at the eye contact. They're all looking at her and she is looking back. 3 things are on display here, and this is for you to recognize. She got the job. I hope so, Har. Very good. I think she did. They look very happy here. But look at that. Look at the way that they are engaged based on the body language. We are able to read that room. When you walk into the interview, sit up straight. Hands in the modified, this is called the steeple position. This is called the modified steeple position. That's okay. Hands up above the table or on your lap. Never disguise or hide your hands. People don't trust what they can't see. So the hands are always on display. Eye contact is critically important. Next chapter is called Minimize the Distance. Now, Ahmad has been in class with me, and Ahmad, you may have noticed I never, that's underlined, never stood behind a podium. Would you say that's true?
That is true.
Right. I don't like doing that because it separates me from my students, and it's just not the way I teach. I also train people for TED Talks. And when you do a TED Talk, people do not stand behind barriers. You're right out there on the lip of the stage. My recommendation to you when you have a formal presentation, do not stand behind a podium. That is a place to hide. I would even recommend don't bring notes. You know your subject matter better than you think you did, and the notes become a crutch. Stand right in front of the people that you are communicating with. Be calm, be confident, slow it down, and recognize you're there to connect with them, not just to convey information, but to make them understand what do they think, what do they feel, and what do you expect them to do. Next commandment, everybody into the chat, just type in the number 3. Real simple model. We, in this world of information overload, communicate too much and too fast. So one of the ways to bring discipline to the way that we communicate, how many wishes does the genie grant you? It's pretty simple. You get 3 wishes. When you read stories as children, we read about musketeers, bears, and mice. Notice 3. 3 little bears, 3 blind mice, 3 musketeers, all of that. If you take a look at many of the advertisements that you listen to, they are in the rule of 3. A couple more commandments. When you're taught to learn English, notice the punctuation marks on the left. You know when you write and you read what the punctuation marks are expecting you to do. However, when you speak, these punctuation marks are invisible. So often, it's your responsibility to punctuate. So, Shukriya, what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to read something I'm about to put up. And then I'd like you to read it again. And I want everyone to understand the distinction between what you've just read. So first, Shukriya, go ahead and read this out loud.
Let's eat that.
Okay, now read the second one.
Let's eat that.
Okay, what's the difference in meaning between the first and the second?
And the first, we almost eat the dad.
Yes, you are eating dad. What's happening in the second?
In the second, we are asking dad to come and eat with us.
Perfect. And what is the difference in the second sentence that made you have a different conclusion?
Yeah, a comma saved the dad.
Right. So the comma is the punctuation mark that changed the meaning of the sentence. But notice something so simple significantly changed the meaning of the sentence. Here's why I'm saying this. When people present to me, they're speaking way too fast. And they know in their mind, I know you're not saying, let's eat dad. You don't eat your father. But that's what the sentence says if you don't pause. This is why the command and the rigor you bring to your ability to communicate has significant implications into what the listener will interpret. Do not give them a reason to misinterpret you. But if you're sloppy and not disciplined about how you communicate, and you don't pause and comma, you may be misinterpreted, which could be costly for your careers, your marriages, whatever that may be. We strive for clear communication. So my first thing, everybody, slow down. We are a society that is talking too fast. How do we solve that problem? Ahmad, your favorite. It's called the power of the pause. And what did Mark Twain say about the power of the pause?
The right word may be effective, but no word was ever as effective as a rightly timed pause.
Okay, there are 3 benefits to why we pause, Ahmad. What's number 1?
Allows the listener to catch up and absorb your points.
So think about the importance of this statement. Slow it down. Recognize the reason we communicate is to maximize absorption. And if you're speaking too fast and you don't pause, they are immediately going to interpret you in any way they can.
Catch your breath. Prepare for what's next.
Perfect pause. So Ahmad had the opportunity in the catch your breath in between, prepare for what's next, to breathe. Get the air back into the lungs and clear your mind. Many people who communicate ineffectively, their mind is too full. So it's just saturated and overwhelmed. And number 3, Ahmad, when you are speaking in pauses, what does it do?
It guides the pace of your talk.
Perfect. So you are now in charge of the cadence and the tempo. Any musician can understand that. And then just 2 more. We're almost finished. Notice on the visuals how I do the visuals, and I'm very picky about them. Heavy use of animation. I do not put everything all at once. Do not put everything up on that PowerPoint all at once. If you have 3 things to display, and you display all 3 of them, and you're talking about the first one, the mind and the eyes of the listener is going to go to number 2 and 3 while you're talking about 1. You are diminishing the capacity of being able to communicate with impact. Little bit at a time, just the way we speak, 1 word at a time, same thing. So also, chapter 10 talks about vocal variation. Just as I'm speaking with you, sometimes I go higher, sometimes I go lower, but I try to bring a variety and a little musicality. I grew up, my mother was a pianist, so I grew up to the sounds of Beethoven and Bach, and I recognize it's always changing, and it's keeping my attention. So we'll be finished in just 2 minutes. Here is my call to action. And if Warren Buffett were standing there, Ahmad, when he came onto the Columbia campus and the financial engineers, your classmates, asked him for advice, he did not say work harder. He did not say follow your dream. Ahmad, what did he tell our wonderful Columbia students?
He said, improve your communication skills and increase your personal value in the marketplace by 50%.
Beautifully stated. So this is not just my opinion. This is one of the world's richest men who gives wonderful advice that's very specific. You don't need to worry about your technical competence. You'll be fine. People are really good at what they do, but they're not particularly good communicators. So if you want to increase your value, learn to communicate with power, purpose, and precision, which A Climb to the Top sets out to do. So by way of finishing, if you are on LinkedIn, feel free to link me in. I will accept your invitation. That way you can follow my blogs, the progress on my book, when we release the book, if you have any interest in that. And I'll give you a preview on it, Ahmad, when we talk about the next is communication. What does 50% mean? Improve to that. What Warren Buffett is saying in that quote is if you improve your communication skills, the value by which you are perceived by the employers. His assertion, you have increased your value by 50%. Thank you for the LinkedIn, Ahmad. I appreciate that. So think about that. You become more valuable to your employer, not just because of your technical competence, but 50% increase in your value by being a superior communicator. Does that answer the question? I hope it does. Okay, great. So it's bringing a value. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I just want to give you some of your welcome. Here are the books that are important to me, including the book that I wrote, but also the most important book in my journey has been Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. To me, it is the best book on human behavior I've ever read, and I read it all the time. There are other books here, particularly on emotional intelligence and some of the other domains that I focus on, but all of these have meaning to me in some capacity that I found incredibly valuable. So if I can recommend that, take a picture of it, read them, but I'll give you access to one of them, and that's mine. So if you don't already have a climb to the top, feel free to go into my assessment from my website. So you can either take a screenshot or take a picture or copy paste it or go to my website, chuckgarcia.com. And on the Engage tab, which is right here, you will find the assessment. When you take the assessment, I will return a copy of the book in PDF or an audio file, whatever you prefer. And now we're finished up. Let's finish your Ikigai. The third part, we're done in 2 minutes. The third part of Ikigai is what gets me paid. So this is now the commercial consideration of how you are going to make a living. So what I could put in, you make a living as an engineer. Maybe you write a book and you collect book royalties. Maybe you tutor. Maybe you own property and you now collect real estate or rent. So think about the things that get me paid and look at the severity of this model. What we look for in our lives to lead happy and successful lives often comes at the intersection of three things: what I love, what I'm good at, and how I make a living. Because what I found throughout the course of my own coaching practice, working with many executives, they don't do what they love, or they get paid, but they're not very happy doing it. They're not very good at it, or they're very good at it, but they don't love it. All kinds of combination could occur. My call to action to you, particularly if you are applying to college and you don't know what you're going to write about that makes you unique. What I know is this intersection in your Ikigai is very much an expression of three important things in your life: who and what you love, what you're good at, and what you do for a living. And they all matter. Sometimes some is more important than others, but I think to lead a happy and prosperous life is to identify the things that matter to you and then to go out and be the person that you want to be in your Ikigai. And I hope you find this helpful. You can do this with other people. You can send this Ikigai to someone who cares about you and you can talk about it. My recommendation is take a picture of your Ikigai and text it to someone who cares about you for your discussion. And then lastly, just to finish up, Shukriya, take it away. This is the last part. Go ahead.
Challenges the core and main spring of all human activity.
Ahmad, take the second one.
If there's an ocean, we cross it.
I'm going to take the third. If there's a disease, we cure it. Shukriya?
If there is a wrong, we right it.
Ahmad?
If there's a record, we break it.
And finally, to everyone into the chat, if there's a mountain, everybody into the chat, 3 words. If there is a mountain, what do?
I will climb it.
We climb it. Everybody into the chat, we climb it. You are now about to climb the college mountain, the graduate school mountain, the career mountain. I hope you do. You're going to climb, and it's never going to be perfect. And it's going to look different when you get to the top of that mountain. It always is. But what I hope that you recognize is the challenge that you have ahead of you is worth it. My recommendation, focus on your technical capacity. That's 1/2 of your career capacity. The other half is to focus on the right side of your brain: communication, empathy, collaboration. So I want to thank all of you for your time. Let me shut off the machine. Ahmad and Shukriya, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Chuck. It's really, really helpful and valuable tips, and I really learned a lot. And I'm sure the others also they learned, and I'm gonna use this, and I'm sure I will be a better moderator next time.
No, it's all good. My recommendation, Shukriya, don't try to do too much. Focus on one or two commandments so you can focus on the rule of three. So as you're talking about it, even talking to yourself, today I'm going to do three things. I'm going to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Today I'm going to read, I'm going to write, and I'm going to go to the gym. Three things. Just put into your mind the muscle memory that develops over the practice of each of these commandments. Next, think about when you're speaking. Just what I've done right now. When I pause, that's the opportunity to clear my mind and think about what I'm going to say next instead of, don't do that. It's just noise. It's okay to be silent. Let them wait. Some people say they're going to get so impatient. They may, but it's the only way you're going to change this tactic. So, Abdul, thank you for the kind words. I have another several minutes. I will hang around and I know we're late, and I'm sorry for that, but I am here in the service of you. So if you'd like questions, concerns, comments, I'm going to hang around until there's nobody left. Ahmad, was this okay and what you expected?
Chuck, thank you so much. I regret that we have to finish the lecture. I wanted the lecture to go on and Professor Garcia talk about all this amazing techniques. What Professor Garcia is teaching us here, it's a process. You don't have to be worried if you don't get it on the first lecture. Professor also has his videos on LinkedIn, on YouTube, everywhere you can watch his previous videos and his book. And Professor has been so kind to provide us with a free copy of his book. And please take the assessment.
I have put the link to the assessment into the chat function right now. So you can just copy that link, go into the assessment. I will read your assessment and shoot you right back the book. Very simple. Take about 10 minutes to do it.
I'm going to take over the question and answer section. If anybody has any questions that they want to directly ask Professor Garcia, they may unmute themselves and ask their question. And if you're not comfortable talking directly, although I encourage to do this, it's a communication lecture. If you don't want, you can type in your question in the chat box and we'll ask Chuck. Girls College, please go ahead and ask your question.
Good afternoon or good evening, Professor. Here is good evening in Kabul. So thank you for the lecture. It was great.
You're welcome.
And we really enjoyed. I really enjoyed. And so my question is, please, if it is possible to have sessions with the students of Girls College who are applying for the universities, particularly in the US universities, they really need some kind of help and guide how to write personal statement. Thank you, Professor. And thank you, Mr. Thank you for coordinating this. I think it was a great, amazing session. Unbelievable. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Well, thank you for coming
Chuck, I'm going to jump right in before you answer his question. Mr. Niazi, if you could briefly introduce yourself and your organization so that Chuck can decide based on that.
So the Girls College was founded almost a year ago, and it is a non-profit educational initiative. The purpose of the Girls College is to qualify or prepare students for the higher educations abroad because they cannot study in Afghanistan. Currently, we have around 600 students in 3 provinces, in Kabul, Bamiyan, and Ghazni. And most of our students are high school graduates. And we do have some undergraduate students who have begun the universities, but they couldn't continue to finish.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, first, thank you very much for the opportunity to be able to make a difference here. And to Ahmad and Shukriya, thank you very much. As far as it concerned Girls College, consider it done. It would be my pleasure, and I can't think of any other higher honor. So what I would like to do, girlscollege.edu. Thank you. In fact, that's what I was looking for. Just get some reference. Let me copy and paste that into my own browser. Give me just a second so I know, because in addition to wonderful students like Isha, I have a network of many former students that I think can also contribute here. So Ahmad, I'm going to make 2 recommendations. First, on Girls College, we can communicate offline. if we do what we did here or any variation of that, delighted. And we can establish that agenda. Any adjustments that we made from here, I will include them in there. So that's girls' college. Ahmad, what I would like to recommend is we schedule, if everyone is so inclined, the next session on emotional intelligence. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to juxtapose the importance of emotional intelligence and how it relates to the communication skills. So we'll build on this class, and I'll leave that to you, just as we have the email the dialogue to establish that next step. Two different fronts here. Girls' college is separate. The Hami Student Alumni Association will continue on that dialogue.
Chuck, we have a question here in the chat. Would it be possible to award them with a certificate with a certification that they took the?
Yes. So what I'll do it over the weekend. I do have, and I do it. Many of the Chinese companies I work for ask for those certifications. So I do have a template. The only thing I'll need then is, just so I don't get the spelling wrong, Ahmad, and it may be in the invite, the name. I just need certainly the email addresses so I can send it to everybody. But I would need, and maybe you could create a separate spreadsheet. I don't care how we do it. Name and email address, and then I'll create the certificates and then send them out to each individual.
So guys, make sure that you send us your correct spelling of your name as it is on your passport, on your documents, so that you can use it correctly. Thank you for that answer, Chuck.
And we'll just disperse accordingly. No problem. Happy to do that.
I think our lecture today was very good because everybody participated. Thank you for your participation. We had some people who didn't mute themselves, but it's okay this time. Try your best to remove the ambient noise and not use filler words like me. Try to pause. It's a progress.
I'm less concerned about the ambient noise and more concerned about the rule of three and the power of the pause.
Anybody else has any question, please let us know. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining our lecture. It was amazing to have you all in your lecture. So I will pass it on to Shukriya to conclude the meeting.
So just want to conclude, if you want to follow us, if you want to have this kind of events more, just follow us in social media. We have Facebook, we have Instagram, we are in LinkedIn. Thank you so much. So if there is any question, we are here for a few more seconds. If not, so just take care. I will see you next time.
Thank you very much. Signing off. Ahmad, we'll keep in touch on the next steps.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Take care.